Friday, July 14 edition of PFT PM. I made it 5 for 5 during beach week. Last night, didn't have much to consume, so feeling good today. Woke up with the sunshine, got some work done at PFT, posted 3 or 4 stories, and now we get a chance to talk about some of the things happening in the NFL as we wrap up our week in Hilton Head and head back to West Virginia for the last hiatus week of PFT Live. We are back in 10 days on Peacock, Sky Sports, Sirius XM 85, and everywhere else you can get the PFT Live content. I'm going to start with a guy that I only talk about when there's reason to talk about him, and that's Tom Brady. This time, the reason for talking about Tom Brady does not come from Tom Brady. It comes from one of his former teammates, Antoine Winfield Jr., who, while appearing on the Richard Sherman podcast, and this comes to us via our friends at JoeBucksFan.com, Winfield said that he believes the team is still reaching out to Brady, trying to see if he will come back to the team. Hey, it could happen, Winfield said. Anything's possible. Later, Winfield said, it's up in the air, in response to Sherman saying, I don't put nothing past Brady. This is a crazy world, and he's a crazy guy. So, look, that's hardly the official position of the Buccaneers, but the Buccaneers understood very well from a business standpoint the value of having Tom Brady on the team. And apparently they are selling the Tom Brady creamsicle jersey, even though he no longer plays for the Buccaneers and won't be wearing the creamsicles unless he does indeed show up again. Currently, it's Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield competing to be the starter. Winfield described it as a 50-50 split between the two. And wouldn't it be something if in comes Brady? Now, here's the problem. Well, first of all, the obvious problem is he says he's done and he's not coming back. But he's already played the I believed it when I said it card as it relates to his proclamation from years ago that he'll retire when he sucks. Jim Gray, the co-host of the Let's Go podcast, asked Brady that specific question. You said that you'll retire when you suck. You don't suck. Why are you retiring? And he said, I believed it when I said it. So when he said he's done, he's never coming back, he believed it when he said it. See, I've said all along, no one's going to know how he feels, including Brady, until football season begins again. There's a smell in the grass that is different, that late summer. There's just some element to it that takes you back to football practice when you were a kid. I'm sure it's going to do that for him. Think of all the years he's been playing football, and all of a sudden he's not going to be. And he's going to see the train begin to chug its way out of the station without him. He's never experienced this before. We don't know how he's going to feel because he's never endured a football season starting without him being part of it. Even in 2008, when he tore his ACL, he was there for week 1. He had to see how the season proceeded without him, but his focus then was getting healthy, not sitting back and just watching football season play out without you. 2016, when he served his Deflategate suspension, he was still around for training camp. Football season didn't start without him, and he was anticipating his return. This is the first time that we've ever seen Tom Brady start football season, football practice, without Brady involved in it. For him, for us, for him, it's been so long, he probably doesn't remember. So how will he feel? I think back to Brett Favre, 2008, with David Letterman, when Letterman was questioning him about whether or not he was really retired. That was after Favre retired the first time. He said, once camp opens, I don't know how I'll feel. That was the first time I thought, oh boy, he's coming back. We don't know how Brady's going to feel. He doesn't know how he's going to feel. Now, the other issue is his ongoing effort to buy a piece of the Raiders. But that's easy. Isn't that easy? You just push all that off until after the season. It hasn't been approved yet. He doesn't own a piece of the Raiders yet. If he's going to play for anybody, once he becomes a part owner of the Raiders, it's got to be the Raiders. And even then, there's a vote that has to be cast. And he couldn't own part of one team and play for another team, although who the hell knows? The league can do whatever it wants, and he's Tommy. He sells. All of a sudden, those Buccaneers games would be a lot more significant if Tom Brady is playing for Tampa Bay. So the Bucs would love it because it would fill the stadium. The league would love it because let's have more Tommy. And Whether or not Brady would love it remains to be seen. But Antoine Winfield Jr. said it, and that was enough to get my attention. Yesterday, the Jets got everyone's attention by signing defensive tackle Quinnen Williams to a 4-year extension. He's in that same cluster with all the other interior defensive linemen who signed contracts this offseason. Jeffrey Simmons, Daron Payne, et cetera, et cetera. Chris Jones is the one that's still out there. Jones is the one that I think is going to try to get closer to Aaron Donald, try to break from that pack. Williams, I don't know how hard he tried to break from that pack, but it didn't work. And at the end of the day, it's hard to say no to that life-changing money. Even if it's not as much as you wanted, it's more than enough to get you to say, okay, I'm not going to say no to this and try to get more later because serious injury, all of a sudden, maybe I'm not effective for some reason, whatever it may be, that money's never coming back. So he made a smart move. The question is, I believe, as it relates to the next guy, Chris Jones, how hard is he pushing to get closer to Donald than the Quinnen Williams, Daron Payne, Dexter Lawrence numbers, Jeffrey Simmons at $22.5 to $23.5 million range that we've seen? Still waiting to get the full Quinnen Williams breakdown. Usually I'll get within 24 to 48 hours the full breakdown so we can see exactly what it's worth, how long it's good for, when the Jets are basically in a year-to-year option situation, how much of it's fully guaranteed at signing, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully I'll get that today. When I get it, I will post it. As soon as it shows up, we'll break it down. We'll put it at PFT, and we'll continue to wait to see if Chris Jones, number one, gets a new contract, and number two, how much more it is above and beyond that group of guys that have gotten paid so far this offseason. How close does it get to the standard bearer at the defensive line position, especially on the interior portion of the line? That's Aaron Donald. I got some thoughts about Hard Knocks sparked by Aaron Rodgers addressing the situation, acknowledging that it was, to use his term, forced down our throats. Look, they don't want to do it. For the first time in the 20-plus years of Hard Knocks, we have a team that doesn't want to do it. They've always had a volunteer. They came up with the formula that would be used to tap a team on the shoulder and say, you're doing it, if they ever got in a spot where they couldn't find anybody who wanted to do it, and it finally happened. They got to a spot where they couldn't find anyone who wanted to do it, so they had to tell the Jets you're doing it, even though the Jets don't want to do it. Now, if they really want to make this compelling, and I know that NFL Films is probably, well, we don't want to make it about ourselves. Well, let's have footage of meetings, tense meetings between Robert Saleh and someone from NFL Films where they're discussing how far they're going to go and what concerns they have. Let's be self-aware as a production this year. Let's use that. Let's lean into it, as they say. Let's fully embrace the idea that the Jets don't want to do it. Let's make that the storyline. For the first time ever, we got a team that doesn't want to do it. We're not just going to ignore that. We're going to own it. Makes it more interesting. Tune in for the next episode of Hard Knocks to see how hard the Jets try to keep the cameras from getting into the quarterback meeting room or whatever. I think it's good. I think it's smart. It's good production. Get more people to tune in. Get more people interested. Now, one thing that Aaron Rodgers said he likes about Hard Knocks is the narrator, Liev Schreiber, the voice of God, guy who's been doing it, I think, forever, accomplished actor. And then I thought, there's another strike in Hollywood. There's an actor strike to go along with the writer's strike. I wonder if Schreiber's just not going to do it. Because Rodgers said, well, I hope to meet him. Well, I have a feeling he doesn't hang around at training camp. He's in a studio somewhere doing the voiceover as they get it ready, and they tell him, here, read this script. But what if he says, I'm not doing it? I don't know how this works. It's not a scripted show, but there is a script. Somebody's got to write the script. And I suspect NFL Films isn't part of the whole broader writer's strike, but I don't know. I don't know who's in what union. I don't know how that works. Are there writers on strike? I need to ask the league. How does these strikes affect Hard Knocks? I hadn't thought about that until Rodgers mentioned the narrator, and I thought, well, they're on strike. Wouldn't that be something? And maybe that's a way the Jets can get out from under this. They're going to respect the picket line. They're going to respect the picket line. They're not going to practice, so there's nothing for NFL Films to actually record. I don't think it goes quite that far, but I feel like this strike that no one really pays a whole lot of attention to, and nobody seems to have a whole lot of sympathy for the actors and the writers. The writer's strike's been going on for months now. it would seem to affect Hard Knocks in some way. We'll try to find out how and why that might be a factor. Coming up on Monday, the deadline for franchise tag players to sign long-term contracts. I wrote something about this earlier today. It really is a stupid rule. Who does it benefit? Why do you arbitrarily take away the ability of a franchise tag player to sign a long-term contract with a team that tagged him? It doesn't help anybody. They want to keep this guy. They want to sign him long-term. Why do we apply this deadline in the middle of June? Now, if anything, it helps the team. See, this is why we're hearing rhetoric from guys like Saquon Barkley, the Giants, Josh Jacobs of the Raiders, that if they don't get long-term deals by Monday's deadline at 4 p.m. Eastern, they're not going to show up for training camp or they're not going to show up for week 1. They can't do anything now to maximize leverage other than huff and puff because of the deadline that takes away the ability to do a multi-year deal. When the time would come to not show up for training camp, hold out every day, not show up for preseason games, not show up for week 1, they can't get what they're trying to get. They can't get a long-term deal anymore. All they can get is a 1-year deal. Now, they can get more than the $10.1 million they're each due to make under the franchise tender. They can get a promise that they won't be tagged next year, but they can't do a multi-year deal. You can do any 1-year deal you want, any terms that the teams are willing to give, that the player's willing to take to end his holdout, you can get, but you can't get a multi-year deal. You can't get that life-changing long-term security after the middle of July, this year, July 17, because the 15th falls on a Saturday. Get rid of the rule. There was a time when there was a moratorium on negotiations between the franchise tag player and the team until July 15, and then the window opened. And they flipped it at one point. They should flip it back. I'm told that agents were trying to push for an extension of this deadline because they're limited in what they can earn on a franchise tag. They want to be able to get a long-term deal done. Why slam the door prematurely on the ability of the player to get the long-term deal? The last CBA, apparently agents were telling the union they should push to get rid of that deadline, and the agents weren't successful, and the union just didn't do it, but it should be gone. And I know the union's going to have to give something up to get rid of it, because it's there, it's on the books, and if the players want it to be gone, then the league, says, okay, fine. What are you going to give us? We're fine with it. We don't need to get rid of it. It helps our teams. There's nothing that the franchise tag players can really do after the middle of July to put teeth to their threats. They make their threats before the middle of July, and then they don't do a deal, and there's really not a whole lot that they can do. So it would make sense. It would be good for everyone if they just got rid of that rule. And even though the current CBA lasts until the next decade, they can reach whatever agreements they want on anything they want, anytime they want. And this would be one that I just think it's more fair for the players, for the teams, for everyone. It doesn't make sense to have this. I mean, what's the reason for it? There's got to be a reason for it. And the reason apparently is, well, we don't want the players to have any real leverage when training camp and the regular season rolls around. They can't get anything. They can't, they don't have to show up. They can't be fined for not showing up for camp. And if they want to hold out and miss regular season game checks, that's their prerogative. But they can't get what they're trying to get because of this July 15 deadline. I've been getting some questions about how this Jon Gruden lawsuit will work and how it potentially could create problems for the commissioner, for Daniel Snyder, for anyone and everyone connected to the NFL that may have had a hand in the dissemination of the Gruden emails. Because, look, on the surface, no one's going to shed any tears for Jon Gruden. There's an attitude of, you got what you deserved. Why are you suing? Who are you suing? You should sue yourself for sending the emails. But I read through the complaint again today, and the argument is very simple. If you're willing to just ignore the repugnant nature of the emails and understand how they came to be disseminated to the media, you have 650,000 emails that were collected as part of an investigation that only occurred because of workplace misconduct issues in the Washington Commanders organization that got the attention of the league, resulted in the Beth Wilkinson investigation. That's where these emails come from, the original Beth Wilkinson investigation. So you got 650,000 of them. And Bruce Allen, the former Commanders president, telling Gruden that it would end things for a lot of people, for everyone, if those emails were fully released. So you've got 650,000 secret emails. why do a handful of them end up being selected, sent to the league, sent to the media, and then Jon Gruden's out? His argument is someone deliberately took me out. Someone weaponized these emails with the goal of getting rid of me. And his claims are consistent with what came out in the ESPN story from earlier this week, the idea that, and this is part of the ESPN reporting, Roger Goodell and Jeff Pash, the NFL's general counsel, called Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders, after the first email came out, the one about DeMaurice Smith, the NFLPA executive director. And they said to Davis, what are you going to do? You got to do something. What are you going to do? And during that conversation, reportedly, Goodell said more emails are going to come out. Davis didn't get the hint. Davis held firm. More emails came out, and boom, out goes Gruden. And Gruden's argument is this was specifically done to force Mark Davis to push me out. Leak some, see what he does. He doesn't get the message. Leak more, keep leaking until Jon Gruden is out. The theories, the big theories that caught my attention, this idea of intentional interference with contractual relations. When somebody who's not a party to a contract decides to get involved and result in that contract being terminated prematurely, there's a legal theory that applies there. Tortious interference with business relations. You've got Mark Davis, who's perfectly content to continue to employ Jon Gruden. But then you've got someone else who deliberately produces information for dissemination to the media that forces Mark Davis to do something he doesn't want to do, as evidenced by the fact that he was content to keep Gruden after the first email came out. So, all right, we got to do more. We got to do more. We got to keep going until there's enough that Davis has no choice but to act. We have to get Davis to fire Jon Gruden. We're going to do whatever we have to do to get Davis to fire Jon Gruden. That's the theory. Somebody got involved in the business relationship between Jon Gruden and Mark Davis and destroyed it with the goal of ending Jon Gruden's tenure as the head coach of the Raiders. That's a legal theory that, again, you got to set aside the facts, the troubling facts, the facts of the content of the emails. That's going to be Gruden's biggest challenge when it's time to go in front of a jury. The other argument is basic negligence, that the NFL had a secret stack of 650,000 documents as part of an investigation that all of it's secret, all of it's confidential. We don't even want a written report. See, this is where it's going to work against them. The NFL brushed the Beth Wilkinson investigation under the rug with this cockeyed notion that some of the employees who cooperated with the investigation requested anonymity. So instead of just changing their names, we're hiding everything. We're keeping it all secret. We're keeping it all safe. We're not going to let anyone see anything. Okay, fine. Well, that applies to all the documents, including the ones that you might want to peel off and use to fire Jon Gruden, or at least force him to resign. So the argument of negligence is the NFL failed to exercise reasonable care in the maintenance of those documents because it allowed someone to slip in, grab them, and leak them. Someone did it. Was it the commissioner? Was it Daniel Snyder? Was it someone acting at their direction, directly or indirectly, who will rid me of this meddlesome priest? Regardless, the case goes forward. If the NFL is unsuccessful in its Hail Mary attempt to get the case forced into arbitration, the secret rigged kangaroo court will never know anything. We'll never find out anything. Whoever presides over this won't give Jon Gruden the ability to figure out who leaked the documents. If we avoid that, if he's able to pursue this in open court, he's going to have a full and complete opportunity to figure out who sent the emails to the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. And even though the reporters won't say anything and can't say anything, you can still take discovery to find out which phone number it was, which email account it was. And then when they find out where it came from, and you question people under oath. I went back and watched all of the 2.5 hours of Roger Goodell testifying to Congress in June of 2022 to see whether he was asked. I was 99.9% sure he wasn't asked about the Gruden emails. He wasn't. Dan Snyder was, and he denied leaking them. Goodell wasn't. So only one of them would be in trouble for lying to Congress if, obviously, they were lying to Congress. Goodell has reportedly said to the owners he didn't leak them. Now, you can get into word games. You can get into the definition of what the word is. And it's one thing to be the one who presses the button. It's another thing to be the one who tells someone else to press the button, or someone else presses the button thinking that's what they were expected to do, even without a direct order to do it. Just kind of a raise of the eyebrows or hand gestures or demeanor or whatever. But we'll find out. We'll find out, hopefully. Look, when Jon Gruden says he wants to burn down the NFL's house, that doesn't mean he wants to end the sport. He wants the league office to pay for this. He wants whoever took him out to pay for this. There's a lot of animosity there. There's a lot of ill will there. And somebody allowed that attitude to become the thing that brought down Jon Gruden. Now he's going to try to bring down someone else's career as payback. And this is a legitimate way for him to pursue it, because he does have legal theories that if they're true, if the allegations are true and can be proven, yeah, you got a problem if you're the NFL, or if you're Daniel Snyder, or if you're whoever it is that took those documents that were supposed to be secret and made them available to the media. Time for number 6 on the PFT top 10 coaching list for 2023. This isn't an all-time list. This is right now. Number 10 was Doug Peterson of the Jaguars. Number 9 was Mike Vrabel of the Titans. Number 8, Kyle Shanahan of the 49ers. Number 7, Rams coach Sean McVay. And at number 6, the first-year coach of the Denver Broncos, who was with the Saints for a long time and won a Super Bowl there, Sean Payton. And look, I know a thing or two about how Sean Payton makes the sausage. I've got the play that he wrote up and sent to me 5 years ago, after we were having a conversation about the amount of time you can devote to looking for any ideas that can help you against a given defense. And you have limitless time, as much as you're willing to spend. It's one of the reasons why coaches sleep in their offices or don't sleep at all. Every minute spent not grinding film, not looking for some clue that's going to help you better attack the team you're about to face, is a minute wasted. It's a difficult spot. When is the hay in the barn? When can you finally take some rest? When can you finally say, I've got enough? And Peyton is always looking for something. And when we were having that conversation, he eventually said, how are you making me nervous? I got to go. I got to get back to work. And then 5-10 minutes later, he calls and says, I found a play that's going to work this weekend. I'm writing it up. I'm sending it to you. We're going to use it. It's going to score. I guarantee it. And it did. And it worked. Because what he does, he watches film of every touchdown scored in the league by any team that weekend. And he looks for anything out of that play that he could maybe glean and use. And that's part of what makes Peyton great. There are a lot of different aspects that go into it, but that very strong commitment to attention to detail, to finding something that doesn't just give you a play that scores a touchdown, but something that makes a difference on 2nd and 7 or a special team situation that you may or may not be thinking of. Hey, the onside kick in Super Bowl 44, the surprise to start the second half. Even though the Colts took the lead after that, the Saints recovering that onside kick and scoring was the first moment that was like, hey, they can win this. Holy crap, they can win this. So, look, Peyton, a quarterback guru who got the most out of Drew Brees for a long period of time, now is charged with getting the most out of Russell Wilson. And if it doesn't work for Russell Wilson this year, it's not Peyton, it's Wilson. Peyton is proven. The shorter quarterback, you run his offense, you listen to him, you do what he tells you to do, and it's going to work. And this is a great opportunity for Russell Wilson to turn things around. And Peyton has proven, look, I mean, I don't know where else he could have gone. I don't know if the Cowboys were really interested. Maybe if he had waited one more year, the Cowboys would have been. But this worked out perfectly for him to go to the Denver Broncos because it's a new ownership group with a lot of money. They're willing to spend it. He knows what he needs in order to have a successful team. The defense is going to be the only question because he focuses so much of his time on the offense. But he's probably learned over time, especially after the Bountygate scandal, that you do need to pay some attention to what's happening defensively, because if you completely abdicate that, you may get yourself into a situation where a rogue like Greg Williams just screws everything up like he did with the bounty scandal. But Peyton, Super Bowl win. You know, most of these folks in the top 10 have at least one Super Bowl win. Shanahan doesn't. I think Shanahan's the only one in the top 10 that doesn't have a Super Bowl victory. But Peyton has one, and he's keenly aware of the fact that there's no coach who has won a Super Bowl with 2 different NFL teams. He is going to be trying to do it. There are 3 guys this year who are trying to do it. Doug Peterson with the Jaguars, who won his with the Eagles, Mike McCarthy with the Cowboys, who won his with the Packers, and Sean Payton with the Broncos, who won his with the New Orleans Saints. So Peyton comes in at number 6. Next week, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll get you all the way to the top. There may be a surprise or two along the way. I don't know. Tune in next week, one day at a time on PFT PM, and we will continue to unveil the top coaches currently in the National Football League. What we will unveil now, the questions that some of you may have. And I appreciate the patience. I see some of these questions popping up again and again. I'm going to try to get to some of them. Let's see what we can do here. First, I got to find the GIF. Here it is. John Travolta looking around. All right. PFT PM posse, in an alternate universe, timeline, simulation, Patrick Mahomes is a 49er with Shanahan as his head coach. In this alternate reality, how good, bad do you think the 49ers and Chiefs are? Is Mahomes still the face of the NFL and its best player, especially if Kyle forced him to play within his scheme? I think at some point, Kyle Shanahan would have been smart enough to realize that he had a quarterback that he should let have the freedom to improvise and practice the improvisation. That's what the Chiefs do. All of that stuff that we see Patrick Mahomes do, he's told me last year that it's what he does in panic mode. They practice panic mode. So it's something he's been there. He's done that. He's been in situations where he has to come up with something when the play that's called doesn't work. That's what it's all about. See, Kyle Shanahan believes, and maybe Mahomes never develops as that guy. Maybe with Mahomes, the play that's called always does work. Because Shanahan believes if you just run the play that I've called to go against his defense, it's going to work. If you run it as it's designed, it's going to work. And it's going to gain yardage, first down, touchdown, etc. Maybe we would have been deprived of some of the best things we've ever seen from Patrick Mahomes because he wouldn't have had to resort to those. He just operate within the confines of the offense and not run around and use the crazy arm angles and out of position body alignments. Maybe he wouldn't have had to do it. Who knows? But I do think the 49ers would have at least 2 Super Bowl wins. At least 2 with Patrick Mahomes as the starting quarterback. And who knows who the Chiefs quarterback would have ended up being. What would they have done? Would they have targeted Lamar Jackson in 2019 or one of the other quarterbacks that year? 2018, excuse me, in 2018. If they didn't get Patrick Mahomes in 2017, would they have gone with Deshaun Watson instead of Patrick Mahomes? If Mahomes had been taken by the 49ers 3rd overall that year or 2nd after they traded up 1 spot with the Bears. No, wait, they traded down 1 spot. They were 2nd. They traded down with the Bears. The Bears went up to number 2 to get Mitchell Trubisky, the first quarterback off the board that year. That's going to be a hell of an answer to a trivia question someday. The quarterback drafted before Patrick Mahomes in 2017. So anyway, I think the Chiefs would still be fine. Would they be great? I don't know. But I think the 49ers would be great. The 49ers would now be leading the NFL with 7 Super Bowl wins if they had taken Patrick Mahomes, I firmly believe. Alan McDougal, sorry, my phone's too far away from my face. How are the gambling suspensions going to get, let me try that again. Alan McDougal, how bad are the gambling suspensions going to get this season? I don't know. This may be all of it. Maybe they're trying to clear everything off before we get to training camp so it's not a distraction. Hopefully players now understand what they can and can't do. My question continues to be, how much work is the NFL doing beyond the obvious players betting on sports they shouldn't bet on or betting in places they shouldn't be betting, whether it's at work, on the road, for work, staying in the team hotel, etc. What other potential violations are being investigated and possibly detected? We don't know the answer to that question, but I don't think it's going away anytime soon. Hunter Wallace, what do you think are the stipulations that Jerry Jones has for firing Mike McCarthy? Is it anything less than an NFC championship game appearance? I think he really, really wanted Sean Payton and would have given him $20 million per year. One of the things that we reported in Playmakers was how close the Cowboys came to getting Sean Payton in 2019. It didn't work out. There was never a strong sense, though, that Jerry Jones was willing to throw Mike McCarthy overboard for Sean Payton when Payton was available. But when you look at the changes they made to the coaching staff, especially firing Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, and giving Mike McCarthy the power over play calling, it just creates a sense that this is it. Be careful what you wish for, McCarthy. Now you got to go prove yourself. You got to go prove that you can do this. You got to make this happen. You got to design the plays. You got to call the plays. You got to manage the game as the head coach. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, we're going to find another coach. And I don't know who he's thinking about. Some people think Dan Quinn will be the next coach of the Cowboys if McCarthy gets fired. I don't know about that because you still need a great offensive coordinator. And if your offensive coordinator is good enough and the team is good enough, you lose him. That's why I'm a big proponent of hiring offensive coaches, not defensive coaches in today's NFL. So I don't know what the minimum is. They've been 12-5 each of the last 2 seasons. Is it get to the NFC Championship game? Is it good enough to get to the divisional round? Does it come down to how they lose? Do they lose again on some ill-designed or ill-executed final play like they did each of the last 2 years against the 49ers? No, it was the clumsy quarterback draw in 2021, and it was the Stanford band play that got blown up, sir, along with Ezekiel Elliott before it could even get started this past year. How do you exit? When do you exit? And what are the alternatives to Mike McCarthy come 2024? Jerry Jones gets a very strong sense of responsibility and ownership of his coaches. And he feels like, you know what, I've put in the time with this person and he's getting better. And eventually he's going to be even better. And I want him to be here when he's the best version of himself. It's one of the reasons why he was so patient with Jason Garrett. This is a guy he found and cultivated, and he thought he was going to get himself another Tom Landry. He made the comment earlier this year that he wants Mike McCarthy to coach as long as Tom Landry did. The timeline isn't quite adding up. Mike McCarthy's going to be coaching deep into his lifetime if that ultimately happens. And Jerry Jones will be far deeper into his own if he plans to be around to witness Mike McCarthy being the next Tom Landry. But that's what I think they're looking for, the next Tom Landry, And kind of a high bar to find a Tom Landry, especially a guy that's going to be your coach for 30 years and do it as well as Landry, one of the greats of all time, did it. Lee Dale, what happens if one of the teams pulls the franchise tag from a player after Monday's deadline? Are they still only able to sign a 1-year deal, even if it's with a different team? If the franchise tag is removed, if it's stripped of the player and he becomes a free agent, he can sign whatever he wants. And I'm pretty sure he can sign a long-term deal with his current team as a free agent. Because at that point, you're competing with all the other teams. Let's go see what your market is. Oh, you think you're worth this? Let's remove your franchise tag and see what happens. I think he could do a long-term deal with his current team if the franchise tag is removed. I'm going to have to research that to confirm it, but I think he can. I know that he definitely can with any other team after July 15. He's no longer a franchise tag player. He's a free agent at that point. The one wrinkle that has never been fully answered, and we're not sure what the CBA dictates on this point. An offer sheet extended to a franchise tag player after July 15. We think it can still happen. So let's say, and it's not going to happen because no one's given up 2 first-round picks for a running back. Let's say there was a quarterback out there. Let's say Lamar Jackson was still tagged, non-exclusive, and we get past July 17. And the deadline has come and gone for the Ravens to sign him to a long-term deal. But then some other team had signed him to a long-term deal on July 18. Can the Ravens match that? I think they can, if that would ever happen. I think the team that otherwise can't do a multi-year deal can match an offer sheet if there's still an offer sheet to come, because the ability to sign a non-exclusive franchise tag player to an offer sheet still exists after the middle of July. So that's the one wrinkle that's never been tried, never been proven, never been used. But that's one way to do it. But I also think removing the franchise tag, there could be something in the CBA that says if the franchise tag is removed after July 15, the team that applied it can't sign the player. But I've never heard about that. And I think just the mere fact that the team would be in competition with every other franchise out there for the player and he'd become a true free agent, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to sign to a long-term deal. Now, it's got the potential for shenanigans because you could have the team and the agent work out an understanding that no matter what anyone else offers, the player is going to accept this. So let's say it's Barkley and the Giants. And this is all just hypothetical. I'm not saying anyone's considering doing this, but let's say we get to right before the start of the regular season. And the agent says to the Giants, maybe we can work this out for $14 million a year. Craig Carton's been saying he thinks Barkley's going to sign by Monday for $14 million a year. Let's say it's $14 million a year come September. But, we can't do a long-term deal. I'd like to do a long-term deal. How about this? How about this? You remove the franchise tag. I'll give you my word that we're not going to sign with any other team, and we'll sign a contract with you for the $14 million. Now, there'd be some unenforceable promises made there, and you better trust the person. And if they burn you, you're never going to trust them again. But that's one way to potentially do it if it's allowed. And that would make me think there's a reason to believe in the CBA it's not allowed, that you would try to remove that very easy way of circumventing the letter and the spirit of the rule. But now I'm intrigued. I'm going to go see if I can find the answer to that if I remember. Let's see what else we have here. Manuel Villa, is there a scenario in which the Cardinals lose their first round pick next year if and when the NFL launches an investigation into the workplace practices? I don't think there's been enough of a critical mass for the NFL to do that. When Terry McDonough initially made his complaint and alluded to employees who had been treated poorly, allegedly, by owner Michael Bidwell, I thought, hey, you know what? This is the first drop. Let's see how much more happens. Let's see what else is out there. Let's see who else comes forward, and no one did. It's going to take something to get the NFL to even launch an investigation. And even at that point, I don't think it's the kind of thing that would result in draft picks being removed. It would be punishment imposed upon Michael Bidwell or others in the organization. All right, let's see what else we have here. Manuel Villa, is it possible the Vikings are slow playing the Justin Jefferson extension to use him as a trade chip in a Caleb Williams trade with a minimum cap penalty? I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think they want to keep Justin Jefferson. The problem is their guarantee structure. They need to deviate from their usual structure of basically doing the guarantees as you go without having future guarantees fully guaranteed beyond the current year. That's one thing they do that they may need to break from in order to get Justin Jefferson signed. And the other reality is he's not pushing real hard. He's not suggesting a holdout. He's already said he's going to be there. So if he's fine with it, that makes it easier to take advantage of him. And there's plenty of teams that take advantage of a player's good nature. The only problem is if you push it too hard and you alienate the player, then you got a problem. And I think they should get Justin Jefferson done because it's not going to get cheaper. It's definitely not going to get cheaper. So I hope they're not considering some secret plan to flip Justin Jefferson for picks, or if they think, you know what, we'd rather have a franchise quarterback than a franchise receiver. Although frankly, I mean, if you get a great franchise quarterback, that is more valuable than even the best receiver you could have. It really is. As much as I never want to see Justin Jefferson play for a team other than the Vikings, the bigger objective is to have somebody who's going to be the answer at the quarterback position for 10 to 15 years, who can do all the things that the great quarterbacks can do, can run it, can throw it, can do it all and help you win a game. Then you go find the receivers to put around that player. Philip Rooney II, Hard Knocks or the New York media? Which one gets under Aaron Rodgers' skin first? I don't know, because I don't know how aggressive the New York media is going to be at his introductory press conference when training camp opens. I don't know how often he's going to be available. They were very kid glovish with him when he signed with the team, traded, whatever. No questions about anything controversial. No vaccine questions. You're taking a paycheck from Johnson & Johnson heir Woody Johnson. Any comments on that? He said some things at the ayahuasca or the psychedelics conference. I mean, if they wanted to push, they could push. I think for now, everybody's getting along. My guess is Hard Knocks will get under his skin before the media, because I feel like Hard Knocks is already under his skin. Who is feeding the bear while you are gone? Hopefully no one. Hopefully no one is the food for the bear, although we're regularly checking the cameras and talking to the folks who are back on the home front, and everything is fine. Alahad, what are your honest opinions on the number 2 and number 3 quarterbacks for the Titans, Malik Willis and Will Levis? As a Titans fan at this moment, either starting next year makes me nervous. My expectations this year are be competitive and fight for a playoff spot. If we sign DeAndre Hopkins, we're closer to dark horses. Look, I think Levis is the guy. even though there was a suggestion from Jim Wyatt of the Titans official website that Malik Willis outperformed Will Levis in the offseason program, Levis is the guy. Levis they would have taken with the 11th overall pick if Peter Skoronski wasn't there. They traded up to get Levis. That's the guy Vrabel wants over the long term. Willis, I think, was a guy that John Robinson wanted that Vrabel didn't want. Vrabel benched him for Josh Dobbs late in the season. And when I saw that Dobbs was playing instead of Willis in the Cowboys Thursday night game, I just thought, well, they're keeping Willis healthy for the playoff run or for the Week 18 winning game against the Jaguars. And then, nope, Dobbs is playing in that one too. So I don't think Vrabel believes in Willis. There's merit to the idea of keeping 3 on the roster because you need to have 3 on the 50-man roster in order to use the third quarterback rule on game day. When you consider how many different players they shuttled in and off of the Titans roster the past couple of years, the idea of using one of the 53-man roster spots on a third quarterback may not be all that palatable to Mike Vrabel. So bottom line, Levis is the guy, and I think Willis won't be there. And if Willis is going to be there, he's really going to have to get Mike Vrabel's attention with some performance at practice and in games better than what we saw last year. Here's another one, and I think you're starting to just troll me now. Why did they stop showing you on Sky Sports? Look, we're on hiatus. There's nothing to put on Sky Sports. I'm not going to put this on Sky Sports. It's just me talking in a sort of dark room at the beach or at my office at home or whatever. PFT Live returns, and there's no timing. There's not anywhere to throw into break. It's just me. It's just babbling on and on for clips that we put at the website and that we put on YouTube. July 24, 10 days from now, that's when PFT Live is back on Peacock and presumably back on Sky. Aaron Jager, this is a good question. Do you ever feel there's a dichotomy between your work and the interests of fans? I ask this because you're trying to view the NFL reasonably while fans primarily stick to tribal loyalties and forego reason when evaluating their favorite, least favorite teams and players. Yeah, and I've talked about this recently. The Cardinals are the best example. The Cardinals have problems. The Cardinals are dysfunctional. The Cardinals right now, I think, are the most dysfunctional football operation in the NFL. Cardinals fans get mad at me when I point that out. They get mad at me when I criticize them for something because they circle the wagons and they defend the bird gang against any and all attacks, not realizing that my criticism is aimed at getting them to address the situation, the football organization, to address the situation and make things better. That's why at a certain point, I'll just say, fine, everything's fine. Don't need to improve anything. Keep doing what you do. You do football great. Continue to be exactly what you are. Make no effort to get any better. And so that happens all the time. Happens all the time. Anytime there's an effort to criticize a franchise, a player, a coach, whatever, the fans of that team, that player, that coach take it personally, and they think it's some sort of an attack. It's kind of like you can say something about someone in your family to another family member, but God forbid anybody outside the family says anything about that family member, even if it's 100% accurate, and it's something that family member needs to know about to improve that person's overall prospects in life. It's one thing for us to say it. You can't say it. So, yeah, I experience that on a fairly regular basis. David Mitchell, please review the Favre versus Mississippi welfare situation. It's a civil case, right? Does that mean no jail time? What's the worst case scenario for Brett Favre? Repay the money directed to the university, pay a fine. How do you see it playing out? Well, look, at the risk of getting sued, I will keep this very general. There are civil allegations against Brett Favre related to the misappropriation of welfare funds. He has claimed all along he did not misappropriate anything. He didn't know where the money came from. He had no idea it was welfare money, etc. One of the items that we posted recently relates to Favre's position. He's not going to invoke the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination when testifying in the civil case. A lot of times we'll see that if there's a potential for criminal liability, someone, when questioned in the civil case, will invoke the Fifth Amendment, which basically kills their defense in the civil case. When you have people saying that you did something that you shouldn't have done, and therefore you owe somebody money over it, and your response is to invoke your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, it's kind of hard to believe your position that you didn't do anything wrong. If Favre is going to throw caution to the wind and testify and answer tough questions and be grilled under cross-examination, some of that evidence could become further fuel for a potential prosecution. Or he could perjure himself inadvertently or intentionally while testifying under oath to what he knew and what he didn't know and when he knew it. And non-lawyers think they can fence effectively with lawyers. They have no idea what it's like because that's not their life. Good lawyers who know how to properly interrogate a witness know how to tie you up in knots and get you to create the impression you're not telling the truth, even when you're trying to tell the truth. So it just wears you down, and it wears you down. It's a few good men. Eventually, you admit to ordering the code red. You get so worn down by a skillful questioner that you just can't help yourself. That's why so many criminal defendants don't testify at trial. And it's why so many civil defendants who are facing the potential for criminal prosecution will invoke the Fifth Amendment. They'd rather lose. They'd rather tank the civil case than put themselves in position to end up being accused of some sort of criminal misconduct. Favre is confident that's not going to happen, or he wouldn't be testifying or agreeing to testify in this civil case. A Red Zone Out, is Hollywood grinding to a halt? Good news for the NFL and its potential viewing numbers. Well, hell yeah, there's no competition. Now, look, it's not like the NFL has any current competition as it is when it comes to scripted TV versus the ultimate reality show, which is the NFL. But I think this fall, football has even greater value because there's not going to be any fall lineup. There's not going to be any shows. There's not going to be anything new unless you've got some of the networks out there that have a backlog of shows ready to go. It's good for the NFL. JC, is Dennis Allen on the hot seat? I don't know. I don't think he is. I'd be nervous about Jon Gruden sniffing around if I was Dennis Allen. Maybe it shows how secure he is in his position. But they were okay last year. Now, look, any coach is just one really bad year away from being on the hot seat. But I think Dennis Allen is fine. He's done great things with that defense. They just didn't have a quarterback last year. Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston. Let's see what they do with Derek Carr. But Allen has been a great defensive coordinator. They went through some bad defensive coordinators, historically bad. And I was sold on Allen the night that Sean Payton was on the COVID list. It was a Sunday night, and the Saints went to Tampa Bay and shut out the Buccaneers 9-0 when Tom Brady was playing quarterback. So I think Allen should be fine. But one bad season is enough to put a guy on the hot seat. Hurricane Dave, what is your standard breakfast order if you go to a restaurant? Good Lord. I like eggs with the yolk fully cooked. And I always get nervous about ordering them that way because inevitably I poke the fork through the skin of the fried egg and yolk runs out. And I hate running yolk, but I like it when it's fully cooked. And I love making it at home the way that I like, my way. But I like eggs over hard, fully hard, bacon, maybe some sort of potato, but I don't really need it. I'd rather have extra bacon and toast, white toast. That's mine. And coffee, at least 2 cups of coffee. One more from Hurricane Dave, and we'll call it. Other than not gambling, what's the best piece of advice Butch ever gave you? Butch is my dad, who was the bookie for years. And he told me at a young age, you can't win when it comes to gambling. Don't do it because you can't win. Everything's rigged against you, and ultimately it is. You may win a little bit, but that little bit you win is just the drug that gets you to keep coming back until you lose and you lose and you lose some more. The best advice he ever gave me, and he didn't articulate it this way directly, but it was the message I gleaned from what he said. And it's something that he told me when I started law school. He said, the best thing you can do is act like you're already a lawyer. And I took that and made it into, you should always act as if you already are whatever it is you're trying to be. Act accordingly as you're in the pursuit of being that thing. And maybe you can act it into existence. So other than acting like a successful gambler, don't do that. Anything that you are trying to accomplish in life, behave as if you already are that thing. And maybe the wisdom is that over time, you eventually do become that thing that you were trying to be. That's it for now. I'm trying to get to the beach, so I am going to go there after I have a little bit of lunch. Thanks, as always, for visiting us. We've finished the week successfully here at the beach. I'll be back in my office on Monday for another edition of PFT PM, as we sit just 10 days away from the return of PFT Live. Thanks. As always, check us out all weekend long at profootballtalk.com, and we'll see you again in a few days. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.